Consistency is key to successful sales outreach. So why do so many sales professionals burn out so quickly and stop their outreach before they begin to see any returns? The answer is simple. It's because they don't approach it with the right mindset. In this snippet, Pam and I examine why consistency is an important part of the outreach process and how you can adapt your mindset for a more successful approach and results. Let's get into our top 10 things, the top 10 things that are impacted by mindset.
I'm ready.
The first one, consistent outreach.
Okay, so Dan, mindset as it relates to consistent outreach. I'd like to hear your perspective as to why you chose this one as the first one.
I thought about a sales professional, right, building their brand and building their business. And one of the first things that we all know, if you've been in sales for any amount of time, is consistent outreach, whether it's networking, putting on events or hosting events or attending events, or targeted calls to those businesses that you think you can help. And if you're not consistent in the outreach, you're going to have a very hard, difficult time building any kind of consistency and experiencing any type of success over time as a sales professional.
So how do you think we're wired naturally when it comes to that mindset around outreach?
I think if most of us are going to be honest, we have moments where we understand how important outreach is. And in those moments, sometimes we understand that it's not personal. It's just part of the process. And we dig in and we'll spend a couple days or a couple weeks putting together some kind of outreach process. But when we don't hit results right away and we feel like we're investing a lot of time and effort, and there's a lot of emotion that goes into it because none of us like risks, after about 2, 3, or 4 weeks, a lot of people pull back because they didn't get what you would call any immediate returns, and they get frustrated.
I like the immediate gratification piece. I agree when it comes to our mindset with outreach, we have to think very differently about what the goal is regarding our outreach. And I think the instant gratification piece is a tough one to work through.
Pam, as we talk about consistent outreach, I'll remind the listeners that you and I spent some time talking about this in episode 87. I think it was something titled 3 Barriers to High Performance.
Okay.
You know, when I think of consistent outreach, I don't want to be repetitive here, but the one word that comes to mind is obligation. And I think you and I talked about that. Mindset shifts from, oh, I have to make these calls. If I don't make these calls, I don't have a pipeline. My funnel's low. I need to get some deals in. I'm not making enough money, right? That's a part of mindset that impacts consistent outreach. We talk about moving that from that type of mindset regarding outreach to this other side of mindset, which is it's an obligation. You get to reach out to people. You have an obligation to reach out to people. And as you and I talked about, right? You got 15 years, 20 years, or 25 years of experience in your space. It is an obligation. People need to hear from you. They don't know you exist. And a lot of them might need your services and expertise. And that's the obligation part as a professional.
Any ideas on how I begin to train myself to think differently when it comes to that consistent outreach from that lens? Because part of what I think as sales professionals, we don't have a methodology in which we're practicing how to lead with more this mindset versus just telling ourselves a story for a day that says, well, I got to remember, this is my obligation. I've got to do this. People need to hear from me. How do I truly start to believe over time where I automatically go into this mode? What are your thoughts on practicing? What do I do to practice this?
I don't know about the automatic part. Maybe it's out there. But I do agree with the self-aware practice part. I think the best thing for our listeners to do is before you start any outreach activity, you have to do a gut check on where your head is. It's not going to happen automatically. As you go to send your emails, before you press send, or even before you write them, let me even backtrack, before you write them, where's your head? Are you thinking, I have to send this? I hope they like what I have to offer. I need to prove to them in 2 or 3 sentences why they should meet with me, right? If your thinking is fundamentally based on that, you're going to come off with what we call that scarcity attached mindset. And you're going to feel all this pressure and you're going to exhaust yourself because 5 days later or 10 days later, You're going to get depressed or frustrated because you're going to look back and go, nobody's responded yet.
So my words for what you just said is I want to be able to develop a routine. And I think we can look at routine as a very positive word when it comes to outreach. I want to build a routine that's sustainable over time that doesn't allow me to ride these highs and lows regarding outreach. And if I stick to the routine, if I evolve the routine, if I practice the routine, my hope is for our listeners that I agree with what you're saying, Dan. Don't know if it's automatic, but it will become more our natural state than not if we can develop a mindset rooted more in a routine.
Right. And I think in that routine, in those 10 to 15 minutes prior to your outreach activity, it is self-aware and self-regulate. You have to bring yourself to a mindset that says, I do not control any of the reactions or responses that I receive. Any reaction or response I do receive is not personal. They don't know me as an individual or personally. You have to remind yourself not to make assumptions. Most of the time, right? They talk about how 90% of the assumptions that we make, if not more, never come true anyways. But we spend so much time making assumptions. So you have to remove the tendency to make assumptions on why people aren't getting back to you, or maybe how they might respond. And then I think lastly, right, I'm going to go back to it. It's a belief that, hey, there are people out there that need to speak with you. You have an obligation to reach out to them. How and when they respond is up to them. Stop trying to control it. I think that's how you need to spend those 10 to 15 minutes preparing yourself mindset-wise before you engage in outreach activities.
I like it.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Sales. If you want to get engaged with us outside of the podcast, be sure to go to our website, lappin180.com. Go to Contact Us. You can also engage with us on LinkedIn at Dan Lappin or Lappin180.